This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Make in India for Defence Sector. The participants are Major General Ashok Kumar, Defence Expert, and Dinakar Perry, Journalist.
The Make in India and the indigenization effort, the defence manufacturing and modernization of this country. A lot has happened in the last few years. A lot of steps have been taken. We just get a sense of, as we celebrate 75 years of independence, let's see, just get a sense of where is it, how is it going forward, what are the challenges we face, and how can we overcome them and take it to fruition. General, can you give an overview of what has happened so far? I mean, a lot has been done. There has been a lot of progress. There are some positives, some things to be pushed further. So can you give a sense of where is it and what are the challenges you foresee in the endeavor to become self-sufficient, so reliant in defense?
If you see, India became independent on 15th August 1947, and as it started its journey towards national growth, number of other countries, even smaller, because of their focus in manufacturing sector, moved much ahead as far as the economic agenda is concerned. But somehow this was one sector where we did progress, but we did not progress as per our potential and as per our need, which also resulted in lack of unemployment and number of other related issues. We got more dependent on the imports and then dishing out our forests on that count. However, it was, I think, September 2014 when the current government declared this Make in India mission. And besides giving certain concessions, rule simplification to the indigenous industry, it also invited foreign vendors and manufacturers to make their products in India, whether it is needed by India or they wanted to go in for exports. A number of process simplification and single window clearance was accorded, and there has been some progress on that. While India wanted to grow economically because of this mission, it was also concerned that the unemployment problem of the country should also get solved. But these manufacturers who were keen to establish certain facilities in India also needed a skilled manpower. In initial stages, there was not much of progress. I think this realization came to the government also. And just about 10 months later than the Make in India mission, they announced the Skill in India mission, and large-scale efforts started on skilling in India. Though both Make in India and Skill in India could have done simultaneously, or to my mind, even Skill in India could have preceded the Make in India. But what will be the issue? Now both are in progress, and they are moving ahead. Some progress has been made, but it has not been made as we visualize. There are challenges, and I'm sure the government will take care of them. While we were going ahead with this, we realized that we are still doing a lot of imports, especially in the defense sector. And therefore, just about 2 years back, the government launched the Atmanirbhar Bharat two-pronged attack. Firstly, it had already become the third largest importer of defense equipment in the world. So it decided to reduce that import. And secondly, not earlier attempted much, it decided to export also to the friendly countries. As far as import reduction is concerned, it took out 3 to 4 negative lists which prohibited us to do any import in those particular segments, and gave a lot of actually incentive to the manufacturing people working in the defense sector, especially the private industry. It was open to them, whether it is a shipping, aircraft manufacture, or ammunition, arms, anything, everything was largely open to them. And therefore, as we speak now, though we have miles to go before we sleep, but definitely a dent has been made in our quantum of import from various countries, and also we have exported close to 13,000 crore worth of equipment to the other countries. The biggest one being the BrahMos export to Philippines.
There are two aspects here. One is about meeting the domestic requirements, our own requirements for our armed forces. Two is about promoting the exports, which adds value and takes our industry to the next level. Now, making a small segregation there, it also boils down to the amount of investment by the private industry, say in R&D. A lot has happened again. A lot of impetus has been made. There's a lot of push for the startup ecosystem, which we have seen some great progress in the last 2 years. A series of deals signed by the armed forces with startups, especially in drones and some niche technologies. But that said, our reliance on the big systems continues. Say, for example, the heavy platforms. In that context, apart from the negative import list, which is a great step forward, what are the structural issues to be addressed? You have the targets. Then you need to also change the fundamentals and the structural gaps to be addressed, which we should be focused on, kind of modifying, streamlining so that the larger things can move forward.
In the question itself, alluded the difficulties and challenges being faced as to how we are not able to take care of the larger platforms to the degree which we need. And even though we desire and we are facilitating the role of the private sector, but still there are challenges. So I will give you some inputs towards that. Probably if those issues are addressed, then we will be much better off than which we are in now. Number one is, there is a government financial regulations, popularly known as GFR. Now that document is the base and mandatory document for doing the procurement for all the central government agencies, including the defense. However, in addition to that, the Ministry of Defense has, come out with the defense acquisition procedure, or, subsequently DPR also, outlining, additional norms as a mandatory requirement to be followed for the procurement. Top of that, the Army headquarters or the service headquarters, their financial planning directorate, they have come out with their own SOPs. And if you go down to the command headquarters, which is the lowest procurement agency for Army Commander Special Financial Powers, they have come out with their own SOP. And with each downward SOP, the process has become, much more restrictive. First, I think fundamental change which the government must do without further delay, that all the procurements must be made within the GFR only. If the Ministry of Defense, Service Headquarters or any other headquarter wants to take out any document to, explain any facet, that must be in the form of guidelines only and not as a restrictive rule. Otherwise, a chain is getting made in which the entire process is getting shackled. And I have personally realized that because of these things, even in a crisis need, it becomes very, very difficult for the items to be procured. Second is that now the government has eased out certain restrictions. It is giving some fund support for the R&D. It has also made the defense facilities in terms of the ranges and other training facilities for the private sector to utilize so that the cost of investment reduces. But I think there is more to be done in this particular sector. There are, two category of, vendors. One is the big ticket vendors. They don't have much of a challenge because they can sustain certain expenditure even if it is a sunk cost. But there are medium to lower cost vendors who have the technological edge, who can deliver a lot of good things, but they don't have the financial base. Once they come out for the demonstration of particular project based on the requirement of the service headquarters, even if their product is found suitable, or if there are some observations which they are willing and they rectify, even after that, currently the service headquarters or the defense ministry does not provide the provision to at least mandatorily purchase or fund that expenditure. And therefore, a lot of brilliant ideas, the smaller capacities, they are just getting negated because of they are not being cost this thing. A third issue is related to the certain big ticket platforms. While it is good that we should do the Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, but there are a high technology needs where the country has to import. Of course, for importing, the restriction could be made for the mandatory requirement of technology transfer, and also the agreement on the co-production that should India or that particular country want to export it to friendly countries, that provision should be enabled. Only then the expenditure will take place. We have done well in the shipping. Certain good and high capacity platforms have been made by the private sector. We have started some bit in the air sector for the fighters and in transport aircraft, but predominantly it is in the public sector. And in army, since there are a varied range of platforms, so in guns and other fields there has been some substantial progress, but there is a lot which needs to be done in this particular field.
You talked about a particular thing about crisis procurement and, allocations and emergency procurements. So just touching upon that aspect, post Balakot and during the standoff and the government, apart from the normal increasing the cap for the army commanders and vice use funds, etc. They have given a special provision or made a special provision authorization for emergency procurement of entire new platforms if required, up to 300 crores, etc., which services can go off the block and just buy them, which actually came handy for the services at that point of time because several things which were stuck in the procurement procedure, several deals for, say, anti-tank missiles or shoulder-fired missiles and so on. We keep revising our procurement procedure, but the point is, it's still a complicated process and services are stuck with lack of equipment, and eventually these ad hoc emergency powers have become a solution for, meeting those critical voids. How do we kind of balance this? It can't be a solution forever.
First stage itself told you that there are multiple layers of the restrictive regime which has been put in place, which is counterproductive to the entire process of the procurement, whether it is you are at peace or in war. And I also suggested that it should be the GFR and anything else should be only in the form of guidelines so that the person who is taking the decision at appropriate level, he can take the decision as deemed fit for the services interest. Now, since things were not progressing in that role, then they went in for the emergency powers. Now, emergency powers were first utilized in 2016, where up to 300 crore the powers were given to the service headquarters, where they can procure the new platforms, whether indigenous, import, for cost of one product, and then thereafter that can be done. Now the emergency powers are much faster than the erstwhile procurement process, but if you critically see the emergency procurement power also, they are still fairly restrictive in their, it is just that it is not that today you want this particular operationally needed drone, you can go and purchase. There are certain restrictive norms with that also. Probably our defense industry has got, I'll say, bad memory, wherein certain wrong things have happened by certain people, by certain vendors, and therefore the processes have been made to check any kind of those things recurring again. We have made process so effective that the product has lost its relevance. But what will be the issue? The emergency powers do provide much better option than the normal procedure. It has been exercised in 2016. It was given again once the standoff with China started in 2020 in Eastern Ladakh. It continued for some time, but since it was time limited, then it lapsed. And what I am hearing from the media inputs, that yesterday a meeting was chaired by Honorable Raksha Mantri in Defence Acquisition Council, and probably, though the government's press brief is yet to come, but as reported by the media, this power up to 300 crores has been given again to the service headquarters.
On defense exports, as we saw record exports this year, and a range of measures have been announced in the last 2 years, including liberalizing the export list, our DAs kind of being open now to showcase what the countries they are in, our defense attaches. We have a long way to catch up with the global manufacturers and how they sell their, equipment. So in that, taking the current momentum forward, what are the steps?
India has decided to go in for exports. This mental change itself is a very, very big change. Two things were needed. Firstly, the capability, credible equipment, and then a capability to market it in the target countries. What has happened that the large number of countries in the world have believed that the China is busy in its expansionist agenda. It is busy in its debt trapping strategy, and therefore they have to be empowered in case they have to take care of their national interests. And towards that, the long-range missiles and number of other equipments are critical. Now, since we are doing the co-production with Russia as far as BrahMos is concerned, so Philippines has already contacted the agreement. Number of other countries in the Indo-Pacific as well as in the Western Asia, they have shown a lot of interest. So BrahMos and number of other equipments also we are exporting. And as we go ahead in time, I think India has now tasked its embassies who are working with the concerned governments to understand their requirements, and they are connecting those countries both with the public sector undertakings and as well as the private sector. India will be able to do a lot of things on both the counts. One is on the reduction of imports and second on enhancing exports in this particular sector.
Thank you for that insight into how the Make in India and the Atmanirbhar Bharat effort in defense manufacturing. Thank you so much.
You were listening to a discussion on Make in India for defense sector. The participants were Major General Ashok Kumar, defense expert, and Dinakar Perry, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on Air. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on Air Official.